All right, tonight we're going to try to go through Ecclesiastes chapter 1 through 6. And Ecclesiastes is from the Hebrew word that means gathering or calling together, and it's considered one of the wisdom books, and it's also one of the poetry books. And so it's kind of bittersweet, like dark chocolate. It's got a lot of stuff that's not so good, but it's okay. But anyway, it's um, it's going to be kind of the lessons that Solomon learned in his life, and he had been through a lot, and he learned a lot of lessons, and he kind of had some backslidings. He got in with got all of his wives, and the Torah says don't multiply wives, and he did it on steroids. But anyway, uh, he kind of, after his life, after he'd been through all these things, he kind of looked back, and he wanted us to gather together and find out that uh, life with the humanistic viewpoint is meaningless. So if you look at the world and life from the humanistic perspective, then it's meaningless. But if you look at it from the divine worldview, then it has meaning. It gives your life purpose and meaning. And anyway, that's the big problem in life. People don't understand what the meaning of life really is. And God has kind of put a God hole in our soul, and we feel like it's not full, but we think, oh wow, if we get a promotion or a job, or we'll get a new car, if we get a new house, we get a new swimming pool, we get a new boat, or we get a new girlfriend or whatever, you think you're going to find meaning, but it's going to be meaningless. And that's kind of the big word in it, meaningless, that we're going to have through here. It's in there 39 times, and I think 27 times or 37 times, 29 is under the sun. And so when it talks about under the sun, these are conclusions that he came to without God being part of the picture. So as a philosopher, he talks about his life, and he's trying to find meaning in his life. And he says, under the sun, that's taking God out of the picture. And this is a big problem, and it's kind of existentialism is the alternative to uh, the biblical worldview. And then it's kind of like you get to decide what your purposes are, but you're going to find out that they're all meaningless. And this is Richard Dawkins. He says, in the materialistic universe, that's a naturalist universe, there is that bottom line: no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but pointless indifference. And so he's got some good conclusions that Solomon came to. They're all true, but that's just from what he's observed, but he doesn't observe the whole big picture because he's just looking at it without God being part of the picture. So where can meaning be found? That's what the whole book is about, finding meaning. And actually, in chapters 1 through 4 is Solomon's search for meaning. And then 5 through 10 has his sayings, and 11 through 12 has his solution to how we find meaning. So here's some examples of people who try to find meaning in their lives. Not in unbelief, Voltaire was an infidel of the most pronounced type. He wrote, "I wish I'd never been born." Not in pleasure, Lord Byron lived a life of pleasure, if anyone did. He wrote, "The worm, the canker, and grief are mine alone." He's like, I'm the sorriest person in the world. Not in money, Jay Gould, the American millionaire, had plenty of that. When dying, he said, "I suppose I'm the most miserable man on earth." So you're not going to find meaning, you're not going to find purpose in money. Not in position and fame, Lord Beaconsfield enjoyed more than his share of both. He wrote, Youth is a mistake, manhood is a struggle, old age is a regret. Not in military glory. Alexander the Great conquered the known world in his day. Having done so, he wept in his tent, and before he said, there are no more worlds to conquer. So he wanted to conquer the world. He finally did it, and he drank himself to death. And he died at a young age. Finally, where's the meaning found? The answer is simple: the Son, Christ alone. So he's the Son of God. When you're under the SUN, you're not going to find meaning, but once you find the SON above the Son, you're going to find meaning. And Ecclesiastes 12, verse 13, here's the conclusion of it. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. So it's basically being in right relationship with God, trusting in him, and being walking with him is the only way you're going to find meaning, and that's what he's going to say at the end. And so we'll start off in chapter 1. The words of the teacher, they call it teacher. It could be philosopher or a preacher. There's a lot of different words for it, but he's trying to teach us something, so they put teacher in the NIV. And the word actually in Hebrew means leader of the assembly. The son of David, king in Jerusalem. So this is the author who's writing this, and so he's recording the words of Solomon, obviously. 2, and it's meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher, utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. That's the conclusion he's come to in looking at the world without God, that there's nothing that's going to fulfill your God hole in your soul. What do the people gain from all their labors at which they toil under the sun? Generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun sets and hurries back to where it rises. The wind blows to the south and it turns to the north. Round and round it goes, ever returning on its course. So all these things are happening. They still happen no matter what you do, and it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't change things, and it's totally meaningless, is what he's trying to say. And all the streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place the streams come from, there they return again. He doesn't understand. They must be refilling themselves. How do they keep filling themselves? And all things are wearisome, more than one can say. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear fill of hearing. So it's all just, you keep looking at it, you'll never figure it out, and you never get enough of the seeing, and you never get enough hearing to get meaning and understanding in this world, is what he's saying. What has been will be again, and what has been done will be done again. There's nothing new under the sun. He's just saying it's all cyclical. It just doesn't change. Things are always the same. Is there anything of which one can say, look, this is something new? It was here already long ago. It was here before our time. No one remembers the former generations, and even those yet to come will not be remembered by those who follow them. So he's saying we just don't have a purpose on this earth. The earth keeps going, and it just doesn't um, matter. But there is going to be something new, and it's going to be a Savior that was promised who's going to be on the earth, and that's the purpose of their life then, and that's the purpose of our lives now, is to focus on the Savior, as we learned in Hebrews chapter 12. This kind of referring to what Paul's referring to in Romans 8:20. For the creation was subject to futility, not of its own, but by the will of the one who subject it in hope. So he's saying everything doesn't seem to have meaning. We search for meaning, but we don't have it. But it's so we look for the hope, for the reason that it's there, and we're only going to find it again in Jesus Christ. C.S. Lewis, this is a quote: "We find ourselves with a desire that nothing in this world can satisfy. The most probable explanation is that were made for another world." And he's not going to find any satisfaction in this world. He's going to find it all meaningless. And the only way you'll find any satisfaction and peace and joy in this world is through Jesus Christ. In verse 12, I, the teacher, was king over Israel in Jerusalem. I applied my mind to study and explore by wisdom all that is done under the heavens. What a heavy burden God has laid on mankind. So his first search for meaning was through philosophy, and he worked really hard. And he's searched and searched and searched. He probably became the greatest philosopher at the time, and the Queen of Sheba and other royalty came to see him. But he said it was just a burden. I have seen all the things that are done under the sun. He's observed everything around. All of them are meaningless. Chasing after the wind. This is like chasing after soap bubbles or smoke. And they're just all meaningless. This search for meaning in wisdom, it just left him empty. He's going to talk more about it. What is crooked cannot be straightened. What is lacking cannot be counted. Well, we know that Jesus straightened out all the crooked people. Everybody was redeemed when he said, "It is finished." And he's not looking at Jesus. He's just saying it's all hopeless. And what is lacking cannot be counted. So we all have a sin that leaves us totally wanting, but Jesus paid it all. Verse 16, I said to myself, look, I have increased in wisdom more than anyone who has ruled over Jerusalem before me. I have experienced much of the wisdom and knowledge. Then I applied myself to the understanding of wisdom and also of the madness and folly, but I learned this too is chasing after the wind. So he looked for all kinds of ways to find meaning and went after every theory and just found them all meaningless. For with much wisdom comes much sorrow, more knowledge, more grief. It's just going to leave you empty and sad, basically. And it's not going to fulfill you. It's not going to fill the God hole. It's just not going to work. And he's saying wisdom doesn't work. Corey Ten Boom said, if you look at the world, you'll be distressed. If you look within, you'll be depressed. If you look at God, you'll be at rest. And so that's what Solomon's trying to point us to. And that's what he's explaining to you. You aren't going to find it in the world. Chapter 2, I said to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure to find out what is good. So, but that also proved to be meaningless. So he tried all the pleasures. He's going to talk about it here, and it's going to leave him empty and sad. Laughter, I said, is madness. And what does pleasure accomplish? I tried cheering myself with wine and embracing folly, getting a comedian or whatever, or getting drunk, and my mind is still guiding me with wisdom. I wanted to see what was good for people to do under the heavens during the few days of their lives. So he tried all this wine and big parties and everything, and he found it empty. And he also undertook great projects. I built houses for myself and planted vineyards, and he did. He spent 14 years building his um, castle, and He spent 7 years building the Lord's temple, and he did all these big projects. And I made gardens and parks and planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made reservoirs to water groves of flourishing trees. I bought male and female slaves and had other slaves who were born to my house. I also owned more herds and flocks than anyone in Jerusalem before me. He had meals every day with 30 cows and 100 sheep for all his children and wives. He had 700 wives and 300 concubines, and that's what it says in Chronicle. And I amassed silver and gold for myself and the treasures of kings and provinces. I acquired male and female singers and a harem as well. That's the concubine, the delights of a man's heart. And I became greater by far than anyone in Jerusalem before me. In all this, my wisdom stayed with me. So he still had the wisdom while doing this and trying all these things, and I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. He had everything. He was the richest, most powerful man in the world. And I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in my labor, and this was the reward for my toil. Yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done, and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. So he got a little reward when he was doing the work, but really when he accomplished it, it was meaningless. It was all chasing after the wind. It was nothing. Then I turned my thoughts to considered wisdom and also madness and folly. What more can the king's successor do than what he has already been done? So he tried it in different areas. He changed his thinking to wisdom, but just crazy things and everything he could think of, and kind of followed him up. And he said, "Hey, I've done it all. What can my successor have to worry about?" I saw that wisdom is better than folly, just as light is better than darkness. So he looked at the follies and he could tell one was better, but it really is meaningless too, is what he's going to find out. 14 wise men have eyes in their heads, while the fool walks in the darkness. But I came to realize that the same fate overtakes them both. Then I said to myself, the fate of the fool will overtake me also. What then can I do? I gain by being wise. I myself said to myself, this too is meaningless. So he's wise. The fool doesn't have his great wisdom, but he's going to say that they're all going to die. For the wise, like the fool, will not be long remembered. The days have come when both have been forgotten. Like the fool, the wise too must die. So he's saying it didn't really matter. I found the best, but it was meaningless.
And we don't know how old he lived to be.
Now, I'm not sure how old he lived to be. Yeah, I'm not sure. Probably less than 100. Yeah. And
And he had 700 wives.
700 wives and 300 concubines. Yeah. Yeah, he had everything. Yeah, everything he needed to find fulfillment. But he found out it wasn't a good idea, and God warned him. So, verse 17. So I hated life because the work that is done under the sun was grievous to me. All of it is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Well, if you everything you do in life, everything you have in life is fulfilling when you're walking with the sun, Jesus Christ, but it's all meaningless when you're under the sun. I hated all things I had toiled for under the sun, because I must leave them to the one who comes after me, and that's going to be Rehoboam. And who knows whether that person will be wise or foolish? Well, we found out that he was foolish, and he actually took over and he asked the wise men what he should do, and he said the people are sick of paying taxes for all these things, and lower the taxes. And he asked the young wise men what to do. They said tax them more, and so he taxed them more, and he lost 10 out of the 12 tribes. So he was the foolish, and he lost a lot. Yet they will have control over the fruit of my toil, which into which I have poured my effort and skills under the sun. This too is meaningless. So it doesn't matter if you're going to pass it on to someone. It's that just is all meaningless because you don't know what's going to happen to it, and why put your trust in it? So my heart began to despair over all my toilsome labor under the sun. For a person may labor with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, and then they must leave all they own to another who has not toiled for it. This too is meaningless and a great misfortune. I think a lot of times when people get free things, they don't appreciate them as much as they when they have to pay for them. So he's saying that, hey, they're going to get them, but they're not going to work for them. So they're not going to have the meaning that I did get working for them. But it's all meaningless and a great misfortune. What do the people get for the toil and the anxious striving which with which they labor under the sun? All their days their work is grief and pain. Even at night their minds do not rest. This too is meaninglessness. So you work to eat and you eat to work, uh, 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 and then you just are living in this cycle, and it just doesn't really add any meaning to your life. 24, a person can do nothing better than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in their own toil. And so this is the only way you'll have satisfaction is in the work of it. This too I see is from the hand of God. And so he's looking to God a little bit here. He doesn't look to Yahweh, the Lord. He looks to God. And so this little bit of satisfaction I give is because there is a God. For without him, who can eat or find enjoyment? To the person who pleases him, God gives wisdom and knowledge and happiness, but the sinner he gives the task of gathering and storing up wealth to hand it over to the one who pleases God. And so, who's the one who pleases God? Is Jesus Christ. And all they're doing is just a labor that's just going to result in nothing. And the only one who's going to get anything out of it is Jesus Christ when he brings the new kingdom in. And he says, this too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Chapter 3. See, there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under heaven. So this is the bird song. And maybe you all know it already, and I don't have to say it, but I'll just kind of go through it. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to uproot, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to tear down, and a time to build, a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to warn, a time to dance, a time to scatter stones, a time to gather them, a time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search, and a time to give up, a time to keep and time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love, a time to hate, a time to war, and a time for peace. So this is just saying that the whole life is uh, monotony. It's just all the same thing over and over again. It's all boredom, and um, and so uh, this is just meaningless, is what he's going to say. All this stuff that's going on in the world, and that was the bird song, and it was number one in the United States and Europe. And so then he goes on, what do the workers gain from their toil? I have seen the burden God has laid on the human races. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He also set eternity in the human heart, yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to the end. So they can't figure out how God did it all. If you look under the sun, you're not going to see it. And but if you take in consideration to God, you see that God made everything, and everything makes sense, and everything is beautiful. And God has put eternity in our heart, and we have this desire to have eternity, but you just don't find it in the world, but you'll find it with the Son, Jesus Christ. 12. I know that there is nothing better for people than to be happy and to do good while they live, that each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction in their toil. This is the gift of God. So just having the basic things in life and having satisfaction is the only way you can get it is through God. Finding contentment. And then it doesn't matter how much you have, how much you have to eat or drink, or what all you own. You can be living in a tent, and it is the gift of God, and then you'll have satisfaction. I know that everything God does will endure forever. Nothing can be added to it. Nothing can from it. God does it so that people will fear Him. Whatever is has been, and what will be has been before, and God will call the past into account. So it's all part of God's plan. History is God's story, His story, and it all has meaning with God. And so that's the way we got to look at it, from the divine viewpoint and not the human viewpoint. And God's going to judge us for what we do, and what we got to do is build up righteousness in heaven, and not let's build up riches in heaven and not on earth. And I saw something else under the sun. In the place of judgment, wickedness was there. In the place of justice, wickedness was there. And I think he's talking about government there, and government taken over by man, and it just turns out to be wicked. And that's happening, I think, in the world today. 17, I said to myself, God will bring into judgment both the righteous and the wicked, for there will be a time for every activity, a time to judge every deed. So the good and the bad are going to be judged by God, and you better be good when you get to God. And we know that good only comes by faith in Jesus Christ. 18, I also said to myself, as for humans, God tests them so that they may see that they are like animals. Surely the fate of human beings is like the animals, and the fate awaits them both. As one dies, so dies the other. All will have the same spirit, breath. Humans have no advantage over animals. Everything is meaningless. So here he finishes, rather than he finishes with a human viewpoint rather than the divine viewpoint. He finished the divine viewpoint, and then in 18, he said, hey, we're just the same as animals, and under the sun, we can't see what our souls are going to happen, and we don't know if there's anything is going to happen. And so without God, everything is meaningless. All goes to the same place, all comes from dust, and to returns, and to dust all returns. Who knows that the human spirit rises upward, or the spirit of the animal goes down into the earth? So I saw that there was nothing better for a person than to enjoy their work. Perhaps that is their lot, for who can bring them to see what will happen after them? So it's just saying the best you can have on the earth is just do your job and die. And that's all you can figure out without God. Chapter 4. Then I looked and saw all the oppression that was taking place under the sun. I saw the tears of the oppressed, and they had no comforter. Power was on the side of the oppressor, and they have no comforter. And so he's saying that there's a lot of oppression in the world, and people are being oppressed. They don't have any comforter, but we know Jesus sent us a comforter, the Holy Spirit. and even the oppressors and the oppressed don't have any comfort, and it's all just meaningless. And you can have sympathy for the one who is being oppressed, but they all need the Comforter, Jesus Christ, and His Holy Spirit. Verse 2, and I declared that the dead who had already died are happier than the living who are still alive. So he's saying life sucks. It's better when you're gone, and that'll be the end of it. That's from the human viewpoint. But better than both is the one who has never been born, who has not seen the evil that is done under the sun. So he's saying it's such bad stuff here. You're better off to have never been born or been stillborn. And I saw that all the toil and all the achievements spring from one person's envy of another, and this too is meaningless. So a lot of people work hard because they want what the Joneses have, and they think if they have what the Joneses have, they'll be happy, and this too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Fools fold their hands and ruin themselves. So if they don't work, they're going to starve. So if you just keep your hands folded and don't work, you're going to starve. But it's better one handful with tranquility than two hands with toil and chasing after the wind. So he's saying don't totally burn yourself out and take it easy, but you got to keep working. And that's kind of how you find some meaning maybe under the sun. And that's what he recommends. Again, I saw something meaningless under the sun. There was a man all alone. He had neither son nor brother, and there was no end to his toil. Yet his eyes were not content with his wealth. For whom am I toiling? He asked, and why am I depriving myself of enjoyment? This too is meaningless, a miserable business. So he had everything, and he didn't have anyone with us, and we're meant to connect with other people, to have families and marriages. And two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. If either one of them falls down, one can help the other up, but pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. He's just saying it's good to connect. Also, if two lie down together, they can keep warm, but how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. A cord of three stands, is not quickly broken. So he switches from two to three here, and he's saying that you got to get connected. And when they made rope, they would have one down the middle and two around the outside, and that was the strongest of ropes. And two strands just weaved were not as strong. So I think it's talking about if you're walking with Jesus Christ, if you have a third partner to the to your group, that's what's going to make it strong. But also the Trinity, that's it too. Yeah. Better a poor man but wise youth than an old but foolish king who no longer knows how to heed a warning. So um, it's he's saying I got everything, but I'm not taking the warning. And a young guy who's poor, uh, he's going to take a better warning from God. 14, the youth may come from prison to the kingship, or he may have been born in poverty within his kingdom. I saw that all who lived and walked under the sun followed the youth, the king's successor. Maybe that's talking about Jeroboam here. But there's no end to all the people who were before them, but those who were come later were not pleased with the successor. This too is meaningless and chasing after the wind. So it's all this stuff that's happening with the kings and everything is just all meaningless without God. Chapter 5, and now he switches to his sayings and some of his advice. Guard your steps when you go to the house of God. Go near to listen rather than to offer sacrifice of fools who do not know that they do wrong. So they're making the wrong sacrifices. They don't understand things. He's saying get wisdom from the house of God. Do not be quick with your mouth. Do not be hasty in your heart to utter anything before God. God is in heaven and you on earth, so let your words be few. And so just don't, you got to listen. You just don't have to tell everybody everything. You just got to listen and take in, and when you're in the house of God. A dream comes when there are many cares, and many words mark the speech of a fool. So when you make a vow to God, do not delay to fulfill it. He is no pleasure in fools. Fulfill your vow. So a lot of the fools would say, "Oh, I'm going to do all these great things if God blesses me," but they don't do it. So don't get into making all these oaths. Just do what you have to do, and if you make a vow, fulfill it. And it is better not to make a vow than to make one and not fulfill it. Do not let your mouth lead you into sin, and do not protest to the temple messenger. My vow was a mistake. So, hey, once you make a vow there, you got to do it, and you can't back up and take it away. Why should God be angry at what you say and destroy uh, the work of your hands? So, if you don't do what you say, uh, God's going to be angry. Much dreaming and many words are meaningless, therefore fear God. Riches are meaningless. If you see the poor oppressed in a district, and justice and rights denied, do not be surprised at such things, for one official is eyed by a higher one, and over them both are others still higher. So they're in charge of it, and don't get mad at them. And you can maybe help the people on your own. The increase from the land is taken by all. The king himself profits from the fields. Whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. This too is meaningless. Hey, you get this stuff from your fields and everything, and everybody shares in it, and everybody gets some, but it's just going to be all meaningless. As good increases, so do those who consume them. And what benefits are they to owners except to feast their eyes on them? So it just doesn't work out the way you think it's going to work out, and you just got to keep trusting the Lord. The sleep of a laborer is sweet. If he works hard during the day, he's going to sleep real good during the night. Whatever they eat, whether they eat little or much, but as for the rich, their abundance permits them no sleep. So they're worried about all their stuff they own, and they just can't get sweet sleep. And so he's just saying again that hey, there's no advantage in being rich. I have seen a grievous evil under the sun, wealth hoarded to the harm of its owners. So they're hoarding, and they don't give every someone else what they owe them, and this is just total greed or wealth loss through some misfortune. Somebody uh, misled them or cheated them, so that when they have children, there is nothing left for them to inherit. Everyone comes naked into the mother's womb, and as everyone comes, so they depart. They have nothing from their toils that they can carry into their hands. So you don't take anything with you when you die, and when you die, that's the end. And so uh, you don't know what's going to happen to your fortunes, and And he's saying that you're not gonna take anything with you anyway. This too is grievous evil. As everyone comes, so they depart. And what they say again, since they toil for the wind, all their days they eat in darkness with great frustration and affliction and anger. So they're living these dark lives. They don't have any meaning, and they work hard, and it's just grievous. This is what I have observed to be good, and it, what is appropriate for a person to eat, to drink, and find satisfaction in their toilsome labor under the sun during the few days of life God has given them, for that is their life. So he brings God back into the picture here, and that's when you find the satisfaction is when God's in the picture. Moreover, when God gives someone wealth and possessions and the ability to enjoy them, to accept their lot, and be happy in their toils, this is a gift from God. Being content and being happy with what you have. A lot of people think they'll be happy if they get something, if I only win the lottery, but they'll find out they're not happy when they win the lottery. And only thing is when you realize it's all a gift from God and you're satisfied and content with what you have. They seldom reflect on the days of their lives because God keeps them occupied with the gladness in their hearts. So this is the alternative, the biblical worldview, the divine worldview, and then we don't aren't have our focus on the world, like Corey Ten Boom said, and we got to keep focusing on the Lord. Chapter 6. This is a short chapter, so another one of his sayings. I have seen another evil on the sun, and it weighs heavily on mankind. God gives some people wealth, possessions, and honor so that they lack nothing their heart's desire, but God does not grant them the ability to enjoy them. The stranger enjoys them instead. This is meaningless, a grievous evil. So they have them, and they don't get meaning without God, and they don't have God in their life, so they don't get the satisfaction. And maybe somebody else will take it from them, and they're going to find it meaningless and empty. And a man may have 100 children and live many years, yet no matter how long he lives, if he cannot enjoy his prosperity and does not receive the proper burial, I say that a stillborn child is better off than he. So he's saying, hey, if you don't have a good send off, uh, your life is meaningless too, but this is kind of looking at it from the sun. It's what matters where you're going and not your send off, but this is what the world sees. This is a conclusion he came to. It comes without meaning, it departs in darkness. In the darkness, its name is shrouded. So you're going to be forgotten when you're gone. And though it never saw the sun or knew anything, it has more rest than does a man. Even if he lives 1,000 years twice over, but fails to enjoy his prosperity, do not all go to the same place. So this is looking at it from the sun, from under the sun and not with the sun. Everyone's toil is for their mouth, yet their appetite is never satisfied. What advantage has the wise over the fools? So he's going through these sayings again. What do the poor gain by knowing how to conduct themselves before others? Better what the eye sees than the roving of the appetite. This too is meaninglessness, a chasing after the wind. Whatever exists has already been named, and what humanity is has been known. No one can contend with someone who is stronger, and these are just facts that he's giving them truths. And the more words, the less the meaning, and how does that profit anyone? For who knows what is good for a person in life, going the few and meaningless days they pass through this life like a shadow. Who can tell them what will happen under the sun after they're gone? So, Christianity, if false, is of no importance. If true, of infinite importance. The only thing it can't be is moderately important. And that's from C.S. Lewis. So,